on this episode of the Sorority Chat podcast.
What I really want people to hear in that also is the answer, I don't know, is acceptable. It's still okay, but the other person's just trying to see clarity. And if you don't have it, that's okay too, but at least there's an understanding there. It's okay that you don't know an answer at 50 and at 25. It's okay.
Hey y'all, and welcome to Sorority Chat. I'm Liz Alexander, a designer and sorority alum who's obsessed with all things Greek life. My mission? To bring you real conversations, smart insights, and fun stories that help make sorority living even better. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's chat. Hey sorority chatters, welcome back to today's episode. Joining me today is a guest who is proof that there is not a one-size-fits-all path to success, and that hustle, heart, and a little trial by fire can get you exactly where you want to go. Andrea Wightwick put herself through school at Georgia State while working full-time in corporate America. That's not your typical sorority story. Yet her journey is full of lessons that resonate with women who are trying to balance ambition with authenticity. She is now the founder of Hapsy, a socially inclusive drink brand, recently named one of Atlanta Magazine's best, big accolade there, and she's become a refreshingly honest voice around what she calls the business of adulting. And y'all know I geek out over this stuff. From failing forward to being a dependable teammate to building your own thing from the ground up, Andrea shares how to carve a path that is yours alone and how to bring other women along with you. Welcome, Andrea. I am so looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. That's such a warm welcome. I'm really looking forward to kicking off the year with our conversation.
Yes. Well, so I've followed you on social since we met at the Southern Sea Summit several years ago at Sea Island. You brought the Hapsy brand down there. You just have a warm energy. And like I said, I love following along with you. The business of adulting, I think, is fascinating, and we will dive into that. But let's kind of back up, start at the beginning. Your collegiate experience looked a little different than the traditional experience with you working full time. So what did that teach you about self-discipline and focus that maybe you're still carrying with you today?
It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot just academically because I was paying for it.
Right.
One of the things, my background, just so everybody knows, I very much wanted to go to college to get an ROI out of the education. I wasn't thinking, what do I want to do? I was thinking, what am I actually going to be able to pay off these loans for? And so I opted into a business degree and thankfully found a true love of marketing and brand growth and product development. But I had no clue when I was filling out the FAFSA form at 17 if that was going to pay off or not. I ended up getting a second degree by accident. I got a BOGO, is what I like to say. I loved Spanish so much. And so I clept into a few classes going into college, and I just kept taking more and more and more. And I literally never even visited the Arts and Humanities advisor until my BBA advisor was like, you should probably go get a degree. You're like 2 credits shy. I was like, what? What's happening? So it sounds very overachieving, but I really was just putting my nose to the ground and doing what I needed to do to get the biggest bang for my buck out of going to college. And with that, I was able to really pay attention because I didn't want to pay for a class twice. I knew the literal cost of it. But I think also I was already working full time. I started answering the phones at PepsiCo as a receptionist. And I saw, it was a sales and marketing field office here in Atlanta, which, if you don't know, that Atlanta is Coca-Cola's headquarters. So it's also where I like to say I learned how to have really thick skin working.
Enemy territory.
Yes, working in the belly of the beast. But it was the heyday of Pepsi. We had Britney Spears. We had that huge Super Bowl commercial with Beyonce and Pink. Like, as a marketer, you could not have picked a more perfect time to be in a marketing brand like PepsiCo. And it was everything. But within that office, I also had daily access to the finance department, to the sales department, to the actuary scientists. And so as I'm going through my risk management course, I'm like, do I really need to worry about renter's insurance? And they're like, yes, here's why, and I mean, I would just book these 25-minute meetings with anybody in my office. And truthfully, now on the complete flip side of it, in my mid 40s, if I had somebody in high school or college asking for 25 minutes of my time to talk about one little thing, it would be so fulfilling. So now I understand how eager and understanding what the psychology, why they were so eager to help, but it really also made everything I was learning in theory in class so much more real world applicable that I wouldn't trade the circumstance I found myself in for anything. I certainly hear from a bajillion of my friends, because I'm very much the exception, not the rule, in college life, about how much fun they had or how they slept through their risk management class constantly, and they don't know much about homeowners insurance, and they own a home, and I'm like, oh, okay, no judgment, I get it. I would have done the same thing if I could have. But it was a really fun way to actually get drive-by training on every single thing that still applies to this day. There's so many things that are from like something simple like a contract law elective I was forced to take to fulfill my degree, that I just negotiated a contract over the winter break with a new bottler. And of course I went to my general counsel, but I'm very well versed in understanding basic terms at this point. And I think all of it just to that atypical experience I had in college.
There were a few things that you said there that like really resonated with me. I loved your approach of looking at the ROI of college. You understood this is a bill I have to pay. How am I going to get the best return on my investment for my future? Like, I think that's so smart. And the kind of nerd in me now knows that I would probably look at it that way too if I went back and tried it again. And then I love that you asked folks in the office with you that had more knowledge than you and more experience. You recognize that and you went to them and you asked for guidance. Like, as somebody who mentors and really looks for people and students that come to me and want that advice, I just think that's so awesome that you took that initiative.
Thanks. I mean, it was one of the things that, definitely took a little bit of guts to,
Definitely.
Especially somebody like finance, that's very much not my forte. And it just took being vulnerable enough. I think sometimes, even as a receptionist, you're specifically, if, many people listening may be too young to even know what a receptionist was, but it was a gatekeeper in an office and you were very much siloed from everybody in the office. And so the full walk down a hall and turning a corner and then knocking on somebody's office door, like there's a lot of anxiety that can build up in that lead up to just asking for help. And so I would just find ways to organically say things, or, if I'd see somebody walk in the break room, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to quietly need an Aquafina as well, and walk in the break room and be like, oh, by the by, what is this finance term? Just something like that, just to start up the conversation. But I also think it's why I'm just so equally passionate about paying it forward, because I had so much help to get me off the ground and running when, in very practical terms, I was not entering the workforce at a level playing field with a lot of other people. I was entering the workforce in debt. I had a lot of office experience, which is why I started working in office. I couldn't afford unpaid internships is what they were back in the day. I couldn't afford that, but I could afford to learn what a copy and fax machine does and get that on my resume with everything else I was learning there at the same time. So I am very fortunate for the situation I found myself in, because I was able to gain a lot out of it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And good on you for recognizing that. And like you said, choosing to pay it forward, because that is so valuable. And just, we need more of that in the world. And that's sort of my attitude too, was there were so many people that helped me when I just, really didn't know, right? I'm just growing up, coming into my own, and I got so much direction and guidance that wasn't even obvious to me at the time.
Right. Sometimes it takes a couple decades for somebody to say something and actually click.
That is true. That is true. Time, man. You just got to give it time. One of your mantras is be known for showing up. And you've kind of talked about that, the ways in which you showed up during your college years and in your young professional career. But why do you think that this is such a game changer, especially for someone who is early in their career?
I didn't think it was a game changer until maybe 7 years ago. I thought it was just what you were expected to do. And I think, again, I am middle age at this point, well into middle age at this point. So you and I come from a time where if we told our parents to pick us up outside JCPenney at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, you had to be there. There was no calling them on the way and be like, I want 10 more minutes, because they don't have a cell phone. You might have a quarter for the payphone, but you literally can't call them. They're already on the way. So I think what is just simply one of those dying generational things, because we are not digital natives and this is the way the world was for so long. I think it's now become such a strength and asset. And anybody who is young, who hasn't had the inability to just not show up outside JCPenney at 3 p.m. because they want to run in one more store or something, they should probably look at that idea of how reliable they can look in society by just doing what they said they would do, right? Committing to the lunch that they said they would commit to, or answering the email that they said they would answer by a Friday afternoon. If they said it, just commit to it. And if you can't commit to it, communicate that as well. It goes so far with your credibility and being known as a very reliable, that person can get it done. And then what that person is trying to delegate to you can be so tiny or so big, but you are known as the person that's going to show up and handle it. And that speaks volumes for you.
It absolutely does. I experienced that with my own team. I really try to make sure that we're presenting accurate information to clients when, you can expect this from us at this point. And I tell my team, if we're not going to meet that, we have to tell them that. I'll even ask a waiter at a restaurant, manage my expectations. How long is this wood fire pizza going to take to come out? I'm not asking to be people pleased. I'm asking for genuine information. What is real? What are you going to try to do? And if you come through, then I have a happy experience.
And I think it's so important, all of that. Yeah, manage my expectations. I want to put on my tombstone next to, was this on my calendar? Truly do. What I really want people to hear in that also is the answer, I don't know, is acceptable.
Agreed.
Right? It's still okay. But the other person's just trying to see clarity. And if you don't have it, that's okay too. But at least there's an understanding there.
Thank you for saying that, because I am someone who is a recovering people pleaser because of what was instilled in me and get things done, all of that. I felt like I don't know, or asking questions wasn't acceptable for a long time. And that has sort of changed for me in the last 5 to 10 years. And so I really do embrace I don't know. And sometimes that's just it, right? Full stop. There may not be anything to follow that.
Yeah. I think that's half the battle in your 20s because you don't know a lot and you're trying to, oh my gosh, they hired me and I've got to show my worth and yada, 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 right? It's okay that you don't know an answer at 50 and at 25. It's okay.
And I would go so far to kind of bridge the two conversations we've been having today. You can say, I don't know, and you can show up in a way that's showing the other person you're trying to find the information. You're trying to learn more. You're not just saying, I don't know, I'm content with it, and being lackadaisical about it.
Yeah, there is a very big difference. And that's one of the things every single person that has ever worked for me or I've mentored, there is one thing that I tell them before anything else is you are not allowed to bring a problem to me without at least one solution you tried, right? And it could be the dumbest solution. It's okay. It shows that you tried. It shows you cared enough to think through it before just raising the flagpole. And exactly what you said, it's okay if you don't know, but if you can at least bring a little information or at least express that you don't know, but you're willing to try and find out, that goes light years further than anything else.
It does. And we have a similar approach in that. That's what I tell my team as well. And so I've had to retrain myself, though, that if a problem is brought to me, instead of just jumping in and saying what to do, I have to say, okay, what are you going to do about it? Or what do you think we should do about it? Or what do you need from me at this point? And put the onus back on them to just think critically through it. Do you ever catch yourself trying to step in immediately and jump to the solution?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. The first few times I was a people manager, absolutely. And I mean, truthfully, there was even one conversation with somebody who it turned out just to be a personal issue she was going through, but she was bringing it into the office and manifesting it all through the inability to produce a deadline that was needed, right? And once I started peeling it back and trying to solve it for her, I realized it was a problem I couldn't solve at the end of the day. And so I still leaned into the EQ side of my managerial role, but I also was like, I understand that all of that's going on. We have a revolving door here at the office, and you've got to compartmentalize a little bit of that to be able to still get this deadline done. So what can we get done by this deadline? And focused it back on the work, right? Because that is the messy part of life. And it's okay to bring your whole self to work, but it's also something you have to manage as a person. And your manager might try to overmanage you if you're not managing it yourself. And I've made that mistake.
Yeah, I agree. I have too. And it is a balancing act in letting the human parts show at work, but also not letting them overtake the purpose of being at work. And you're always kind of riding that ebb and flow, I guess.
Yeah. And that's just life,
It is.
We make mistakes as managers too. We're like, oh, hang on, I can't actually solve this problem. Okay.
I know. So I have heard you talk about rejection as redirection. So talk a little bit more about that. And was there a certain moment in your journey where that lesson has really come to light for you?
I mean, there's every day, I feel like. Every day. It's a phrase that I didn't necessarily coin, but it locked in. When somebody said it, I was like, oh, I totally get it now. It's okay. It's okay to hear no. I joke, I'm a Southern woman. So I joke, sometimes rejection, I just take to the bed, I just take to the bed over it. I'm like, all right, you get 3 hours to wallow in self-pity and victim mindset, and then you got to get right back out. You get 3 hours. That's it. Take a nap during it, do whatever you need to do, but that's it. So I set a little pity party deadline, and then I move on if it's something really bad. But the interesting thing is that the more you embrace the idea of rejection being redirection, the easier it is to just pick yourself back up and get going. And it's just like, okay, let's say I really was trying to get into Publix right now and with our non-alcoholic cocktail. And Publix came back and said, listen, we don't have a space on the shelf for you. We've got beer section, and within that we can carry non-alcoholic beer. We've got a wine section, and within we can carry non-alcoholic wine. But there is no real, cocktail section. There's not a mixed drink section in Publix. So we don't know where we could put a non-alcoholic section. I could hear that and wallow and take to the bed for days. Publix doesn't want me, whatever. And it's like, no. Redirect. What retailer is the right fit? They're saying very specifically, this puzzle piece isn't there for us. It's not our puzzle to solve. And we're not, as a retailer, shelving anything like that. It's just a redirect to look at the ones that are. And the faster you can turn that critical thinking into another lens, the just faster you are to success.
Yes, absolutely. And this message shows up again and again on Sorority Chat. We had Lydia Finette on, and she talked about the same thing when she was asking people to write portions of her book or be included in the book. And she got some no's back, and she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. And then now she's almost turned it into a game. Like, how many no's can I get? Because then that means the yeses are coming. And so I do think both of these perspectives are valuable, because we are taught to think rejection is bad. It means something about me. And if you can kind of pull back and have a different perspective, you're going to get past it so much quicker.
Agreed. And I think, this is maybe a controversial take, but I think as women, we are so used, just go outside the office, go outside applying for jobs and things like that. Just go to the bar, go to, a hangout place, a third spot. Women generally are the ones that are approached. They're not the ones putting themselves out there. True. And so the idea of rejection is not really something that we have to socially deal with much, because The only time we're really rejected is maybe a friend. On the flip side, the one who is courting and approaching, they are constantly failing, right? And they are constantly walking up and just saying different strategies, right? They're trying different strategies all the time. And so I think as women, it's not, and I'm not making a take on men versus women and who's more successful at handling rejection. I just think as women, if we can at least understand maybe how we're coming up and coming of age and learning about the true data numbers of how many times we've had to put ourselves out there to be rejected, we would find our numbers are much smaller. So it's just going to sting a little longer until we just get those numbers up. So it's just a numbers game. And exactly like Lydia said, you just turn it into a numbers game.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to gamify it a little bit. Find some fun in it. Find something else that you can pull out of it.
Yeah,
that's true. Okay, so you've talked a little bit about Hapsy, but tell us more about it. Like, talk about the brand, talk about what it was like to found this, and just kind of give us some of that background.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fun. So like I said, I started my career accidentally in CPG, which is consumer product goods, just simply by being a receptionist. But I ended up spending 5 years at PepsiCo and worked on sponsorship marketing for Gatorade and worked on brand marketing activation for Tropicana and lots of really fun things. And then I ended up spending 15 years at Nielsen, which is a consulting company, and 10 of those were spent on Coca-Cola.
Oh.
And within that is where I really honed my skill of product innovation and helping them find basically, now it's really common, but back then they were one of the first companies to build an in-house incubator. So they would find brands to acquire or to invest in, and then they would come into my portfolio to manage and expand. And I really understood not necessarily the exploitation of consumer dollars, but the product market fit, the right place, the beauty of saying, I, as a mom, really want to find a delicious chocolate milk for my kids that doesn't have a lot of sugar. Oh, there are these farmers in the Midwest that have a co-op called Fairlife. What if Coke invested in them? And it's a really good high processed protein based milk, and it's less sugar, and they actually strip out some lactose, so it's easier to digest. And, finding these beautiful partnerships and actually making something that the consumer wants is just harmony in my mind. It's so beautiful when that can fit. And I had a ball doing it. And so after 15 years in beverages, you get a little bored because it's amazing. I do not want to take 15 years of non-alcoholic ready to drink and just wash it away, but it cycles a little bit. You kind of see the same flavor profiles or whatever. And I was like, man, I kind of want a challenge. So I asked Nielsen if I could do the same thing internally and build out our own business unit to lead for basically all of food and beverage in America. And so I got to do a lot of crazy, I learned so much about dentures for one brand. And I was like, I wanted a challenge. I wanted less obvious brands and really understand them. I developed a hair care line for men that my husband now uses, but he was too young to use then. And it's just hilarious how the calls coming from within the house, And so these are really fun projects that I got to do and lick my chops a little more because I wasn't necessarily the shopper. I think, when people are going into marketing specifically, it is amazing to work at a company like Coke or Pepsi or Amazon or Nike or, these beautiful heritage brands. And it was, but you just crave a challenge sometimes. And that's when it was just so much fun spending the last of my corporate career, if you will, on 200 food and beverage brands across America. It was just so much fun. But within that, it gave me space to breathe in the cooler and really kind of take a step back and be a consumer again and not just, the hand in the puppet, if you will.
Sure.
And within that, I started to see that the space was really kind of boring. As a mom, this is a fun pro tip for just hosting. If anybody does not know this already, this is a big beverage CPG pro tip. Everybody that works in Coke or Pepsi, if you go to their parties, their coolers, you cut out the packaging and you put it on the front of the cooler so you know what's in it. So let's say I have a huge cooler and I've got Coke Red, Coke Classic in the top left part. I would cut out the Coke cardboard can package and put it there. And then if I have Dasani in the bottom right, I'm cutting out Dasani and putting it on the top. So people know exactly when they reach in where everything is, and it's not mixed up. It's very segmented and then labeled. It's awesome.
That is brilliant. As someone who hosts all the time. Gosh. Okay. Good tip. That's my takeaway. Thank you.
So that is like very known and just normal in my life and in my kids' life now. But I noticed when I was hosting parties for them, just the non-alc options were really boring and the alcohol options were really stale. And I was like, well, isn't there anything else? Like what's going on? You know, what is going on in the market? And what I ended up finding was like there really wasn't much going on in the market. And so I started doing some what we would call internally. I started doing some R&D work to understand like the cap size of the category and if it's worth it. Why isn't Coke and Pepsi investing in this space? What's going on? And basically it just was so tiny that nobody was picking it up. None of the big guys, if you will, are picking it up. And so with that, I started thinking a little harder. And at that point, the itch just needed to be scratched. And so I was like, I'm going to try this and see what it's like. And truthfully, a lot of it from my pedigree is really commonplace, but there's so much I'm still learning because, you know, what's interesting is Coke and Pepsi, they wholly own their supply chain. And those formulas have been, you know, the secret vault formula for Coke is 140 years old. It hasn't changed much. And so when something's so well oiled like that, they've already gone through a lot of the hiccups that we're going through every day. So there's still a lot of rejection equals redirection when you're failing and learning all sorts of mechanical engineering issues behind the scenes that are just, you know, getting in your way of just running a fun beverage brand. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I really feel passionate about is drinking should be fun no matter what you're drinking. If you're drinking a sparkling water, if you're drinking a champagne, if you're drinking a soda, if you're drinking a juice, it should be a fun, refreshing, happy occasion. And so that's what we're trying to bring to the masses is just a socially inclusive cocktail brand. Everything is very familiar, but it's non-carbonated. So we're the only bubble-free, non-alcoholic cocktail on the market.
Nice.
And it's pretty awesome. I really can't tell you how many people are like, thank goodness, I'm so sick of everything being carbonated. And I'm like, me too. I love a margarita. I love a martini. I love a Manhattan. I want a non-alcoholic drink that meets the same sensorial occasion.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. You're right. Everything is carbonated, it feels like.
And we could go into the very nerdy engineering of why that is and manufacturing, but we don't have to. It's okay.
Is there anything from your days with Pepsi and Coke that you had to sort of unlearn as being a founder yourself and starting from the ground up? Was there any kind of major difference there? I mean, because you were talking about this is a well-oiled, long-standing machine. You're a startup. So anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, just to be very vulnerable, there was a learning curve of me realizing that anything I had done in the previous 20 years of my career came with a really big at insert giant company domain.com. And now here I am, you know, I'm like, come on, I know what I'm doing. And they're like, I don't care about you. And I'm like, wait a minute, why not? You know, and so I didn't realize how much I would have to prove myself. I mean, I'm so seasoned in my career that kind of just took me by surprise. I mean, it was fine. It didn't make me like Napoleon complex or anything, but I just was like, what do you mean? I'm Andrea Wightwick. I have all this behind. Look at my LinkedIn. I know what I'm doing, you know, and it's like, I don't care. Are you for real though? And it's like, oh, I am for real. You know, that was a huge reality check. I'm not going to lie. It took me very much by surprise. The other thing that took me by surprise was, you know, I'm very quick to ask for help. But one thing early on, I was on the phone with a chemist and we were talking about something very specific. And while we were on the phone, I remember it was November. I remember specifically where I was and what happened. But while we were on the phone, she was saying so many high level things that I couldn't even write them down fast enough. And I left the call and I just went out to my husband and I said, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just letting you know the teapot's simmering. Like, just leave me alone. And then 3 hours later, I finally said, listen, I'm ready to talk, but I just don't want you to say a word back to me. He said, okay, that's fine. And I said, I was on this call and I was asking this person all these questions. And what am I doing? I don't know what I'm talking about. They were talking about deoxygenation and dissolved H2O. And I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. And he just sat there and didn't say anything like he was supposed to. But then a few minutes later, he was like, can I just say one thing and you hear it? And I was like, yeah. And he said, for 15 years, really smart people at very big companies called you with their problems every day and trusted you to solve them, right? And I said, yeah. And he was like, you're on the same call. You're just on the other part of the line. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. Yes. I'm still in the room. I'm just on the other side talking to specialists, asking them to teach me things. And it was a huge light bulb moment that really shifted everything from being a cog in the machine at a big Fortune 50 company to being like, okay, I don't know anything over here, but I've got to find somebody that does and be vulnerable enough to just let them teach me. And it's okay. That was probably the hugest shift, honestly.
What valuable advice and like so insightful.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He sounds that way. Yeah. So, I mean, but that was just so great to like, first of all, let you simmer, let you talk, and then to just say, hey, it's just, you're on the other side this time. It's not that different.
Yeah. Yeah. It was such a shift, a huge paradigm shift in being an entrepreneur and being okay with just failing and making mistakes, thinking like an engineer. I say that all the time. My kids love to watch this YouTuber who's ex-NASA, Mark Rober, and he puts everything, think like an engineer. And I completely understand it because if you go back to elementary school and the scientific method, that is exactly what entrepreneurship is. And that's also just what building your own career is. Everything. Think like an engineer. Be prepared to test a hypothesis and fail and go right back up to step 2 and start again, you know?
Yes. Yes, I fully agree. So then you're also doing this business of adulting now where you're speaking and you're advising people on that. And so talk about that for a second. Like, are you out there booking speaking engagements? Are you mentoring people? Like, what does that piece of it look like for you?
Yeah, so that kind of came about because if you think about how people are leading companies today, you almost always have to have a social media presence. And so I said, okay, well, I will do that. You know, we met with our marketing agency and they were like, you very much need to be out there. And I was like, I don't really care about being out there. This is Hapsy. This isn't Andrea Wightwick brings Hapsy, you know, I don't, you know, and I understood it, but I didn't really want to, I fought it. Right. And then I said, well, fine. If I do that, I just don't want another sales channel for Hapsy though. I really want to help people understand just how to be. Because when I was growing up, things are just kind of like behind the scenes a little more, you know? And I didn't really understand a lot behind this because I was visibly poor, let's put it that way. And so, you know, I was outwardly judged, but there were a lot of other things that people were being judged for that were very much able to be tucked behind closed quarters, you know, and then they would eventually come out or, you know, whatever. But when you're coming of age and all of that, you don't know all of that. And so I just thought, well, okay, if I'm going to have this social media presence, does it really have to just be selling Hapsy? Can it just be more about like a normal mom of two kids that's just trying to juggle being an educated consumer? You know, I'm really passionate about people understanding the power of their purse. I know because I've certainly used consumer psychology to manipulate it as much as I could for companies. I know what the messaging is doing out there across any Tom, Dick, or Harry brand. And I'm still susceptible to it.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I am, that means like somebody who has a totally different degree in geology doesn't know it. And so, you know, but their dollars are still being fought for every single day on the shelf and online. So can I use my entire ethos to raise the literacy of consumer spending among people who are just interested in learning more so they can be more educated about how discerning they can be with their dollars, honestly. And then additionally, the other thing I really like to talk about is very similarly, which is digital literacy. So raising the digital literacy. So what does digital literacy mean? Digital literacy just means very specifically becoming more literate or well-known, well-versed in digital products. So if you want to voice text someone, how easy is that? You know, here's the voice text. So you can raise the quality of the friendship with them, or you can not let something be lost in tone and writing. You can use your voice to carry it through, and the intention is there in a voice text. Just little things like that can really elevate our community and our relationships with each other. But if you don't know the tiny, it's always like, how like you just really just need to know the right term to Google and then you're off to the races. It's just like that. If you just know all these tiny little tools that this little rectangle can give you, like you can be so much more powerful and impactful in your life. And so I really want to raise the digital literacy among women, as I also am challenging myself to constantly learn it and not become a Luddite, as one usually does as we slip into later in life, right?
Yes, I love that so much. I really appreciate what you said about the voice text, and then things don't get lost in context. There is tone, there's more connection. I use that all the time. I relocated about 2 years ago. The bulk of my friends live somewhere else. And so we will often do voice text because we may not have time to get on the phone and have lengthy conversations, but that lets us be able to connect with each other. And it really does benefit the relationship, just like you said. And so that is such a small but very impactful tool.
Right. And it can work for your social settings and also for your professional settings the same way.
Absolutely. My team and I constantly do voice memos back and forth. The same reason, right? Same thing. Andrea, this conversation was great. I mean, I could go on for hours talking with you, but one final tip, give us one final tip for a college woman as she is trying to figure out her next step. What's your best piece of advice?
Oh gosh. I mean, just do not be afraid to try. If you are thinking something, let's say you're reaching out to me, and you are wanting to ask me 7 questions, but you're so scared. And so you're just going to ask 2. And I answer back, not only within a reasonable amount of time, but 2 questions very thoroughly answered. I want that person thinking, I did not aim high enough. I did not try hard enough, because I want that person meeting a boundary. And that means they were really challenging themselves and they were challenging the norm, right? And so maybe I would have answered 7 questions, but you just shorthanded yourself out of an opportunity. So I want you to not be afraid to really try and find the boundary in life.
Yeah, and really stretch yourself. Very good piece of advice. If people would like to connect with you further, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm on LinkedIn at Andrea Wightwick. I'm on Instagram at Andrea Wightwick, WIGHTWICK. If you're across the pond, it's Wittick. And I have a Substack as well that I publish with a lot of these daily, consumer habits and digital literacy tips.
Awesome. Well, we will put all of that in the show notes so that people can connect with you. I know I love following along with you on social media, just like you were talking about. Marketing literacy, you're constantly going through your closet to make sure you're keeping what is valuable. I enjoy that piece of it as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome to Liz's House Hot Takes. This is where I take the lessons I've learned over the last 16 years of designing Greek houses and offer you my pro tips. Here's today's House Hot Take. Communication keeps timelines on track. A project only moves as fast as the people making the decisions. If emails sit unanswered for weeks or orders don't get placed, the timelines will slide. Quick, clear communication with your designer and contractor keeps momentum going and ensures the project stays on time. Don't be the bottleneck in the project. Speedy replies equal speedy results. Thanks for listening to another House Hot Take. For more inspiration, check out the PDR Interiors Instagram or TikTok. I'm Liz Alexander, and this is the Sorority Chat podcast. Catch you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening on a podcast platform, make sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you got something out of today's conversation, we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. It helps us reach more listeners just like you. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out this video right here or this one over here. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. I'm Liz Alexander, and this is the Sorority Chat podcast. Catch you next time. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry for Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Liz Alexander.